Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlocked Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson. My pleasure to be here with you guys today. In fact, this is just an awesome way to spend some time in my day after the last couple of days that I have had. So I'm super excited to be here with you guys with the amazing Jessica Tietjan. Let me tell you a little bit about Jess, because I'm excited to have this conversation with her today about how we can actually create, a life that we really, truly love. That's what we do here on The Unlocked Show. It's like, how do we do that by design? How do we actually create something with a level of intention? So Jess is, as a spouse, she's a mother, she's a leader, she's a lawyer and a talent management professional. She's also a technology enthusiast. Love those technology enthusiasts. She's a Gallup certified strengths coach, and she's now also a writer. So after graduating from St. Louis University School of Law, Jessica actually went on to work for an organization that has she's an Emerson Impact Partner. She initially focused on contracts and legal matters before actually expanding out with her primary passion in talent management. So after broadening that further, and also adding to the mix technology, customer service, project coordination, order management. Wow, she's got a plethora of skills and a very broad range of knowledge. Then for 10 years, Jessica has worked to shape, how do we say this, Jess, Esperetics talent management program into an exceptional workplace by creating strategies for peak performance. I can't wait to actually talk to her about this, because the landscape of, particularly here, I know for sure here in Australia, with some of the new, I'm going to say, legislative requirements that are coming out for workers nowadays, has certainly changed the landscape. So I'm really interested to kind of talk to her a bit more about how do you create an exceptional workplace with, sometimes with these mandates that are coming out that are requiring people to do certain things. She's also been recognised 3 times by Gallup with an Exceptional Workplace Award, and 4 times by the St. Louis Post-Dispatch as a top workplace. Nowadays, her purpose in life is to actually help other people live an exceptional life, and she believes that workplaces can help contribute to that. So again, we're going to explore that in a lot of detail. And in fact, I want to start by even asking her some questions about what does it actually mean to even, how do we live this exceptional life? Today's show, I actually want to make a dedication today to my auntie. Her name is Wilhelmina Hawthorne, and I don't want to get upset about this. So I'm going to make this a really sort of upbeat show, and the reason being is because this woman, who was the matriarch of our family, she passed away yesterday, but I can tell you that she is somebody in my family, in my life, that absolutely loved, she lived every day to its fullest. She loved big, she did big, she just was everything, in my view, that and it was living her life exceptional. She never ever let anything hold her back, and she always imparted greatness on other people. So I want to make sure, when I saw the topic of today's show, I thought, if any show is going to be dedicated to somebody, I wanted to dedicate it to her, because she is truly somebody who has lived an exceptional life that I have been lucky enough to be able to grow up and watch and learn from her over many, many years. So today's show is dedicated to my dear Auntie Mina, we called her, but her name is Wilhelmina Hawthorne. And as I said, she passed away sadly yesterday. So that being said, Jess, welcome to the show. Today you're lucky, because this is dedicated to a super exceptional woman, and I know you are one and the same. So let's kind of start by giving everybody a little bit of an introduction, who you are, other than the stuff that I've talked about. How have you come to be doing what you're doing, and why are you so passionate about this particular subject?
Yeah, so I have really grown to love this space of helping people in order to live these exceptional lives. A number of years ago, started working to create our workplace into truly an exceptional workplace, to put in place the right practices, the right culture, and all of the right elements to really create that environment. And what I found is that if you're going to live an exceptional life, you really have to do it both at work and at home, because trying to separate the two is just not realistic. It's not possible. I'm a mom of three. So, the two things just have to coincide and have to come together. And so as I've discovered that, and I've worked at that over the last 10 years, I've learned that a lot of the same techniques that you can use in the workplace, you can also use at home. And so if you do it, if you learn it and you change kind of your life practices, you actually can transform your whole life and live a better life overall.
I absolutely love that, because you're totally in alignment with my thoughts too. Is, and the Unlock show is about business, family, and life, and how that you can't really compartmentalize them all. And in the moment where you realize that they're actually all one and the same, and you can totally immerse yourself into your authentic life and bring that into every facet of the way in which you live, is kind of, in my opinion, is the moment that you start to really experience life to its fullest. So in terms of you bringing this into the workplace, how have you done that, and what sort of led you to even to this point of like understanding that? Because I can tell you that from my background, so I worked in a corporate space for a long time, over 20 years, and it was I recall this saying was, you leave your baggage at the door. So it was like, whatever was going on at home in your home life, don't bring that here. There's no place for that in this workplace. We want you to compartmentalize those. And it was almost as if you wanted your your employees to switch off that switch and switch on a new switch when they walked in the door, and they had to become something else. So talk to me about how you have implemented this. How did you come about understanding that this was important, and what sort of things have you done and seen that have made a real difference in your workplace?
Yeah. So our workplace had nothing in place a number of years ago. We really were not we didn't really have any HR practices. We didn't have performance management in place. And so when I came in, I was really tasked to build from nothing, to build from scratch. What should we put in place? And actually, there's a funny backstory. Initially, they wanted me to put in place performance reviews. That was the real question. That was the real, request from everybody. And when I did the research, I said, this is a terrible plan. If we do that, we are going the wrong way. We are going the wrong direction. And so we fought pretty hard to really change the direction of how we do performance and how we implemented those practices. And we came a long way over the years, but I really think the big turning point for workplaces has been the last 2 years. And what we've been through with COVID, with people working remotely, with people, having their children in the background, people balancing kids at home while trying to work, really made it impossible to separate the two things, really made it impossible to keep, leave your family at the door while their family's in the door, right? So I think that change that we all went through in 2020 and still in 2021 has forever impacted us in a way and helped us to see what's possible, that we don't actually have to separate those two things, that we can know the real person and know their kids and their family and their situation and still achieve business results, still achieve the outcomes we want to achieve in business. They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, they complement each other.
What I'm interested to know too is, way back when you started with this particular company that didn't have anything in place, and you started doing this research, why did you, what was it that got you to the point that was like, hang on a minute, gosh, if we go down that path, we're actually going to be going down, a really slippery slope, and it's not going to take us to a good place? How did that all come about? What did you uncover? What did you find that was then like, oh, no, let's not go there. We actually need to go in this direction?
Yeah, so at that time, I think that was when Harvard Business Review dropped the "Let's Blow Up HR" article that was pretty impactful a number of years ago. Adobe had just thrown out their performance review. They were kind of the leading edge of that shift, and there was a lot of research coming out that was showing that people who received performance reviews, that actually negatively impact. You tended to have more turnover of your higher performers and less turnover of your lower performers. So the exact opposite outcome was occurring as a result of performance reviews. And it was generating cost to the businesses. And so the last thing I wanted to do was implement something that was going to add a lot of time and cost, but not actually generate meaningful results. And so that's what really had us go a different direction.
Interesting. I mean, I can recall doing those performance reviews on the regular, every quarter you would do those. So really interesting that you found, or researching and doing that Harvard review, that was the outcome, that you saw that high performers, you started to have more turnover. What do you think specifically it was about? And the reason I want to ask this question is because not only, back a few years ago was this a thing and everybody was implementing performance reviews on the regular. It still is a thing and people are still doing this, but then wondering why am I getting this turnover? What's going on? Why do I have an unhappy culture and an unhappy workplace? How do I turn this around? But not really realizing that the strategy or the practices that they've put in place is actually building that culture of someone saying here, disincentives or a disengaged, disenchanted workplace. What do you think has actually happened with that? So those that are still doing these performance reviews on the regular, what is it about those that is actually contributing to this turnover of people being unhappy as to where they are?
I think there's a number of factors. I think one is the time proximity to the behavior or the feedback that you're wanting them to receive. I think the specificity of the feedback. So most of the performance reviews, they're rating scales with, kind of random competencies listed. And it's not really meaningful input that I can do something with. What I found is when you give employees input that they can take action on, that's not just critical, but helpful. They're willingly and actually excited to say, oh, okay, if I do that, I'll be better. Great. That's what I want to do. I want to do better. And I think what you get with performance reviews is a check the box activity rather than a truly meaningful contributing activity that generates results in your business. It's so separated from the day-to-day activities of what people are doing to execute their jobs that it is not integrated enough to really impact the results and the accomplishments that people are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Now, this stuff that we're talking about today, like a lot of people that we were watching or listening to the Unlock show, they'll be, small business owners, they'll be even solopreneurs with a view that they will be building out their business with employees and virtual assistants and the like, down the track. Do you think this process, we got to start talking about culture and what you do instead of actually, implementing a performance management type structure into your process. But is this something that can work at all levels, or is this something really that, as a bigger business, we should be thinking about?
So I think it can be, implemented in any size business. Our business, the businesses I've worked in for the last over 10 years is fairly small, relatively 200 person company, a good dollar volume size, but a smaller business people wise. And we implemented a lot of these practices without adding a ton of cost to the organization. So I think that it's all very doable and reasonable. And I actually think when you implement performance practices that are really integrated with how work's getting done, then it becomes more natural and it doesn't become a burden. It's just part of what I do while I'm executing the business. And I think small businesses, especially businesses that are just starting out, it's like the perfect time because you can build that in while you're doing it and there's no resistance and it just becomes part of your culture from the outset. And I think it's completely achievable by smaller organizations without adding massive costs or massive overhead to the business.
And I love that you're talking about this. I mean, I'm a firm believer, if you set the foundations right, then, you've got a really nice platform that you can continue to build upon over time. So let's shift gears here, and let's talk a little bit more about, this integration, or the concept of like life, like living an exceptional life of not blending, but being all that you can be with, your business, your family, and life. Because now, in this current day and age where things have changed, like there's been a massive shift in the way in which people work. More people are working from home, and like you say, it's not like you can leave the children at the door. They're in the door, they're sitting next to you, they're on your knee, they're in the next room with, people thinking about, okay, well, now I need to work at home, and potentially even some homeschooling at home. So how has that concept played into the way in which you build out the culture of now, and what are the differences that you are starting to see?
Yeah, so I like to use the term harmony. So keeping my life in harmony. So it's not balanced because it's never equal. One's always greater than the other. So how do I create some harmony between all those different aspects of my life? And then the second, part to that, I think, to that question is, when you think about, how to create that culture, create that environment, it's being really specific about the results or the outcomes you want to achieve. What do you want to see people do versus the hours or the specific time that they put in? And, really in the end, we care about results. We care about how much, what the bottom line is, how much gets executed, whether we hit our targets, whether we create the culture that we want. It's the results of our efforts that matter, not how many hours we punch into a clock or what those hours are. And so I think that that's the shift that we're seeing across, a lot of different businesses, some faster than others, to look at, okay, how do I motivate people by accommodating their needs, but then also they give back that extra effort to ensure that the results are achieved. It's a balance between the two, that people are putting in the efforts they need to achieve those performance results, and as a result, they get a whole lot of flexibility and freedom to accomplish what they need to in their life.
I really love that mindset, and that, I suppose, the angle that you're coming at this from, in terms of it being harmonious, because if you look at it from that perspective, and you can create harmony in your life, and from a top level down, you're creating that at the highest level within the organization. That person is wanting to create harmony. They're creating it across their life, their business, their family, and it starts to disseminate down. Then you've got a win-win-win situation, a win for the company because everything is in harmony within it, wins for the individuals within that organization, and then also your customers and your stakeholders and shareholders also win. So it's creating an ecosystem of that is harmoniously working together on every single level. So I really like that, that concept that you're talking about. And interestingly enough, you mentioned, a lot of people have talked about, we'll get balance. When you're doing balance, it is like that teeter-tot type scenario. You're trying to, okay, well, I'm gonna spin this plate a little bit faster and hope that kind of gets me back in balance. And oh gosh, that was too much. Now I'm going to spin this one. And so therefore it's this constant, juggling of all the things in the air. Whereas in this scenario, it's like, well, let's think about bringing all of it together, bring it together so that it creates a nice harmonious environment that then filters through every facet of my life. And one would hope that then it filters to everywhere, children, your community, so on and so forth.
Well, and I think everyone's really different. So I love my work. Like I love, I've written a book recently. I love working and coaching my employees. I love what I do. So that brings me so much energy and so much harmony in my life. If I were to be quote unquote balanced, I'd probably be out of balance for myself. But somebody else might be very different. They might not, it's 7:30 here. They might not want to be doing, a podcast at 7:30 at night. They'd want to be, in bed reading a book or doing yoga. I don't know, but everybody's different. And so it's figuring that out and treating people in the workplaces and in our families as different, as that each person's unique and different. And what I found is people want to give you their best work. For the most part, people don't want to fail. They want to succeed. They want to be valued. They want to be cared about. So if you do the right things, then they're happy to get to that outcome. They're happy to give back and to contribute and to put in their effort when it's needed and when it's necessary for the business.
Absolutely. Like you say, most people wake up in the morning and they want to do a good job. They want to know that they have made a solid contribution. They don't wake up thinking, oh, I'm going to do a crap job today. That's how I want to live my life. It just doesn't generally work that way. And I think what you've done now, you've created a very beautiful segue for us to continue to talk about, how do you actually create that? You just kind of go down that path now of like talking about that individual, understanding that each person that you deal with, whether they're a client, whether they're an employee, whether they're a business partner, every single one of us is different. We all have different lives. We have different lifestyles. We have different interests. Some have children, some don't have children, some have grandchildren, so on and so forth. How do you start to even think about, I'm going to tackle this on an individualized basis? Because one would think, oh man, there's a whole lot more work in that. If I individualize everything, boy, oh boy, I've got to 10 times everything that I'm doing. If I just make it blanket and everybody's the same, you leave your baggage at the door and then you come and you just, tick these boxes for me in the day, that makes my life a whole lot easier. So what are some of the things that we can start doing, like as soon as we finish this conversation today? What are some of the things that our viewers and listeners can do today to implement this process of harmony in their workplace?
Yeah, so the way, two things, I think. One, I always talk about is performance always starts with you. So when I talk about the individual and the uniqueness of the individual, I believe I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I've drank the Kool-Aid, if you will, but learning about your strengths, understanding what you do best. And Gallup has a Clifton Strengths assessment that they use. That's what I use with my employees to learn about what people do best. And starting from a place of strength is by far and away the foundation. Starting from a place of what do I do best in the world? What comes most naturally to me so that I can apply that and build on that in everything that I do from a performance standpoint. So that's always number one from my perspective. And then the second, and I highlight this in my book, is I talk about that I think there's really 4 keys to performance. And what we've put in place is we call it the 4 keys to an exceptional workplace. And that is expectations, feedback, development, and accountability. And those are really, if you can do those 4 things well, those are what really contribute results. And that's in the workplace, but that's also in our individual lives and our roles in our families and in our roles in our communities.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how many times have things fallen over because, the expectations haven't been, I'm going to say, clearly communicated in the first instance. So people are sort of running a little bit blind and then wondering, people wonder, why didn't they perform at that level? Well, because they didn't actually know they had to in the first place. There was no expectation set. So I love these. Tell me a little bit more about your book. Tell us about what's the name of the book, where can people go and get it, and also the Gallup, strengths process that you're talking about. Is that something that our viewers may be able to do themselves, and where could they go to get that?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Gallup. So the Gallup Clifton Strengths is an assessment. It's available online. It is $20 to take it and get your top 5. I think it's close to 50 if you want your full 34 talents unlocked. It's incredibly popular and valuable. It's been around for a long time, but they've been growing significantly in recent years. So you can just go to gallup.com and you will find the Clifton Strengths Assessment. My book is called The Exceptional Life Revolution, because I think of it as an evolution, that our workplaces, our homes, and our communities need to evolve. And as we're evolving, we're starting a revolution where people can really live exceptional lives, where people can think about how they live and how they exist in the workplaces, in their families, in their communities, in a way that brings more value, in a way that makes them happier, more peaceful, more successful, and just helps them to live that great life, the best life possible.
I love that. Is that available now, Jess? Where can people go to get a copy of that?
It is not available now. If your viewers go to my website, I'm dropping the first chapter for free there, so they can sign up and get the first chapter for free. And the book is going to drop. I just finished the cover, so probably in the next week it'll be available on Amazon.
Amazing. Give us your website and let me pop it up for everybody to be able to get.
Yeah, so it's www.evolvingtoexceptional.com.
Let me make sure I've got that right. Like so, evolvingtoexceptional.com. So There you go, guys. Head on over there, evolvingtoexceptional.com, and you'll be able to sign up and get a copy of Jess's book when it comes out. Let's talk. So this whole concept of like the expectation, feedback, development, then accountability. Let's talk a little bit more about that kind of the key fundamentals of that and how you're going to implement those. Expectation. Let's start with that. What does that look like? What do you do?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's kind of the foundation. You can't do anything until you get clear on expectations. Most of the time, I actually say anytime there's a performance issue, it's always usually one or two things. It's either expectations or accountability. Almost all of the time, it's one of the two. And expectations is the easier of the two to fix. So expectations is really looking at what does success look like. So I always like to start with people in whatever role. So, and my book talks about roles that are in the workplace, but also our roles as families, as mothers, as spouses, and in our communities. And so when you think about the role that you're performing, if you were to do it perfectly, what does that look like for you? You know, what are the things that you would want to be achieving? What are the outcomes 5 years from now that you'd want to have happen? And I think it's a really powerful process to go through that. And actually even more so in some of our family roles than in our workplace roles, because I think a lot of times that happens as part of job descriptions, whether we do it well or not, it at least happens. I think in our homes, a lot of times we don't talk about that. We don't talk about what the expectation is for me or the expectation is for my spouse. And that can alleviate a lot of conflict down the line.
Absolutely. My ears are pricking up. You're speaking my language. You're talking family. That's my thing. And it's really this particular part, like you say, that is the foundation of everything. And it's interesting because we talk a lot about this sort of stuff of like building the life you want, living an unlocked life, meaning you can, do whatever you want. It's your creation to create whatever you want to create within that life you're living. And the expectation, like starting with that, getting yourself clear on your vision and your clarity around where am I going and what do I actually want this life to look like. That in itself is like you're talking about. That's the expectation. It's like what do I actually want? My expectation is that I'm going to live a life like that. So if you can do that and you can create it with, with your children, and funnily enough, I look back and I think about, I've moved several times, particularly in my corporate career, and each time we did that, my children were only little at the time. We sat around the table and we would have a conversation with them, even at 8 years old, about, all right, so mum's got an opportunity for a promotion. This is what it means. This is what it means for everybody. What do you guys think about that? that? What do you want? If when we move, what do you want out of that? So the kids always went into that with an expectation, but also with a buy-in that they are involved in the process. The next part that you talk about is this feedback, because again, once you've set the expectation and then maybe things don't quite go to plan, now you've got to do some feedback. And a lot of people kind of get stuck in this space because they'll say, and I've heard it many a time, I don't like conflict. I don't want to bring that up because it's going to be a conflict kind of situation. How do we handle feedback, providing, quality feedback without it becoming confrontational?
So I like to think about it kind of as a pyramid, and you've got to build the foundation first. So the foundation before you ever get to giving feedback is to build a lot of trust. And to build up that relationship, that understanding. And you can do that again by really getting to know the people that you're interacting with, knowing their strengths, knowing their values, knowing what's important to them, knowing who they are. You build kind of that foundation of trust. And then the next thing that is the most important thing, biggest thing that's changed my marriage early in marriage, is to have way more positives than negatives. So you start by thinking about feedback as, I'm going to give feedback on every positive thing that I can see. And I joke about my husband because we agreed when we learned there's a 6-to-1 positivity ratio. The best performing teams, the best marriages have a positivity ratio of 6-to-1. And so we got into a habit of thanking each other for everything. Like, thanks for doing that dirty diaper. Thanks for cleaning the dishwasher. Thanks for feeding the kids. There are things that had to be done, but the simple act of saying thank you makes both of us feel better. So when there is the critical feedback, we've laid this great foundation of a lot of positive things so that when the critical feedback comes, it's much easier to receive it because it's not the only feedback we're getting. And the worst thing you can do, studies have been shown, have been done to show the worst thing you can do is to give no feedback. Like, you're still better off to give critical feedback than to give no feedback. But the best thing you can do is to start with just a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, that's fantastic. In fact, I had just written that down, actually, that ratio. And I had actually been talking with, on a previous show, some marriage experts, and that's what they were talking about too. I think their ratio is 7-to-1, so it's pretty, pretty darn close. But yeah, that one piece of negative takes, well, I think they were talking about in the concept of, you've got to give. If you give one piece of negative feedback, to get the person back up to, feeling good about themselves, you've got to replace that with 7 other pieces. So, same kind of concept that you're speaking about, but really, really important. And that in itself, like you say, builds up a bank of trust. We also call that, having love bank. They know that you have their best interest at heart, that you're actually coming at things from a place of good intention, and to be helpful, to help them improve improve the situation of whatever that is. The next piece is, and I think you call it development, is the development on that. So let's talk a little bit about that. So that third piece in the key process is development. How do we continue to allow people to develop? And in fact, actually, what does it mean in your concept?
Yeah. So, I'm a huge proponent of a growth mindset, and really always approaching each experience we're having as that learning experience. I think, when it comes to workplaces in particular, if you're not growing, if you're not learning, if you're not advancing in technology, and I've been managing my IT group for 5 years, it is changing so fast. And so, the ability to continue to learn new skills, learn new programs, learn new systems, adapt. Jobs that exist today aren't going to exist 5-10 years from now. So it's so critical to get into that development mode where you're always learning, always evolving, always growing, and increasing your skills. And I think that that's even more important, at least for me as a mom. I've got a 5-year-old and twin 2-year-old girls.
Oh, wow.
And to always be like reinforcing, we've got to learn. It's okay to mess up, but we got to keep learning, because that's going to be their whole life. That's going to be everything. There is no, I get a career and I'm in it for my whole career. It's just not going to happen anymore. So thinking about that again in the context of our workplaces, but our families and our communities too, to how do we keep moving the needle? How do we keep getting better and evolving and developing as professionals and as and within our families and our communities to be better than we are today?
Absolutely, and interesting. This topic has come up a number of times, as it would in the Unlock show, but with some guests that I've been speaking to, and you're right. The environment that we have today is going to be vastly different 2, 3, 4 years, 5, 10 years down the track. And we know that for sure, because you only need to look back and see how much it's evolved over the past 10 years. Gone are the days where you look at your parents and go, wow, they had a 40-year career. I mean, it just doesn't exist anymore, because you need to have that continuous evolution. So one of the things that I really loved was, looking at, so what do I need to do? And somebody said to me a couple of shows ago, if you're looking at your strategy and what you're doing now, and you think that everything's fine, everybody's got every single skill they need to be able to do the job that they're doing today, you can pretty much look at stuff and go, well, we're going to be in a bit of trouble in about 12 months time, because things are moving at such a pace that today you might be at the top of the pecking order, tomorrow you won't be, because your competitors, if they are evolving, if they have that development mindset of continuous development and growth and revolutionizing what they're doing, they are soon going to be passing you in a flash, and it's going to take you some time to catch up. So I love that you're talking about that, and that that is all encompassed in just the way in which you be that, you have that mindset, you have that mindset of continual growth, and are always looking at how can you improve yourself and then those around you. The last piece, sorry, go ahead,
I was
Jess.
going to say, we also use what we call strengths-based development. So using that strengths assessment and looking at, if you think about traditional development, which is, let me come up with all the things that you are not good at, right? Let me list all the things that you are not good at doing. And now let's focus on how can you improve those? How can we fix the things that are wrong with you? And the way that we think about strengths development is, if you think about it kind of like a star, and the strengths are the tips and your weaknesses are the dips, that instead of focusing on the dips, where even if you make it better, even a little bit better, you're just going to end up well-rounded. Instead, if we focus on the tips, if we focus on the points of the star, we will become that much stronger overall. We'll develop and become better and greater. So our strengths are that best opportunity for us to be successful. So I've worked this and I've seen it be so successful. If you can target your strengths and say, okay, here's what comes naturally to me. Now, how do I apply it to these tasks that I have to get done? How do I apply it to help me grow in this new skill that I need to achieve, or this new area of focus I need to accomplish, instead of focusing on our weaknesses?
And what's great about that, I love that analogy of the star, and how we can exponentially grow and continue to improve our strengths. But what I love about this is, and you talked about this earlier on, is that it starts with you. And so when you understand what those key strengths are and you're able to work on those, then you can take a very informed view of your business right from the beginning, because you start with that very basic, you start with really solid foundations. You start with, well, what are my strengths? Now, based on my strategy and my vision and, where my expectation of where I want to go, what do I now need to come in and support and complement what I'm doing, but also potentially fill some of the gaps that I don't have the skill set in. So it allows you to continue to grow in your inner genius, your area of strength, but then also you're then looking for somebody who maybe has the tips of those stars, are like amazing at something that you are looking for. And therefore you're not always focused on, well, how do I improve your weaknesses? What are
Yeah.
you not good at? Let's go improve them. Because I've heard that many a time, even doing the T-bar exercise, or let's put your strengths over here and put your weaknesses over here. And there was a day where you would focus on their weaknesses. Well, if I can get you up here, then the concept was, or the theory was, that you would then become an exceptional, an exceptional employee. Little did they know that the magic was lying on the strength side of things. Now let's talk about accountability, because you're talking about, it's almost like now it's a sandwich. You top and tail this starts with the expectations, but earlier on you also said it's either coming down to one of two things in these four. It's either the expectation that's set at the outset, or it's accountability. And we've covered off, you mentioned the easier one of the two being the expectations. Now let's go to the, say, more difficult side of things, which is the accountability.
Yeah. So accountability is actually my favorite. I think it is. I even write about in my book, I say that if you only read one chapter, it would be that chapter, because I think it is so impactful, where our mindset is and how we're thinking. When I talk about accountability, I am meaning personal accountability. So not, I'm going to hold you accountable, or what are you responsible for, but how do I cultivate a mindset and a culture of high personal accountability, where each person takes responsibility for their own decisions, for their own goals, for their own outcomes, for what they're accomplishing, so that you don't have to get into this, finger pointing, I'm holding you accountable to these results, type of mentality. Instead, it is anytime. So a good example I like to use is anytime you set a goal or an expectation, the person that's going to execute the goal or expectation has to be the one setting it and taking ownership for achieving it. So I don't ever write a goal for my employees, ever. I'll help them. We'll talk through it together, but they have to write it, because if I write it for them, then they don't have ownership and accountability for it. So that is, that's how I think of accountability and having that high personal accountability mindset.
And how that process then, so there's the start of it being, okay, well, I'm going to write what I'm going to do, and I'm going to come up with that myself, so therefore I own it. How does one then keep themselves accountable to what they said they would do? Like, how do you implement that and create the culture where people actually do it, but also feel really comfortable and I suppose I'm going to say excited about doing it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of training that goes into this space, because I think we don't learn a lot of these skill sets early in our life, although I argue that we probably should, of how to deal with it. So most of the time, a lack of accountability stems from some type of emotional reaction to what we're experiencing. So, it's resistance, it's frustration, there's some type of anger, or I feel offended, or I feel frustrated or stressed or anxious, or something that's happening that's causing me to resist owning the results or owning the particular, thing that I'm responsible for or need to take accountability for. So usually that's kind of the root cause. And so I think the first thing we train on is helping people to understand, what is it that's contributing? What is it? I like to think about it as you've fallen in kind of a hole, like I'm in the accountability hole. Now, how do I get myself out of it? And then we give different techniques and different strategies for how to shift your mindset so you can move from a lack of accountability into a high accountability.
I love that. I mean, we've talked a lot today, and I've kind of got you to delve really deep into, the expectation, the feedback development, and the accountability side of things. And I know that, when people download your book and they get their hands on that, you'll go even deeper into that. So I want to make sure, give everybody another opportunity to know where to get your hands on Jessica's book that's coming out very, very shortly. So you want to head yourself on over to www.evolvingtoexceptional.com and make sure that you get hooked up with Jessica so that you can be one of the first to get your hands on the first chapter. And then I'm sure once you read the first chapter, you'll be so intrigued that you want to start reading the rest of it, and you'll want to get your hands on the rest of that book so that you can implement this process, not just into your business, but as you learn it, you'll be able to implement this concept of harmony and living an exceptional life into every facet of your life. And I love the fact that Jessica is talking about it from this perspective, because it is not, I'm going to say, it's not common for people to do that. So they often segment it. So being able to do this in a style that is integrated, I'm absolutely loving what I'm hearing. Jess, is there anything else today that you would love to leave our viewers with? And maybe I'll even ask you, is there a piece of advice you would give to people? Because you have come to us today with a huge wealth of experience across multiple different, industries, having a background in law and this passion for technology and passion for helping people reach their peak levels of performance. Like, what are some of the parting statements that you would like to make, and maybe even a piece of advice that you would like to give everybody?
Sure. So first, also, just so your viewers know, along with the book, I've also created a workbook that goes with it. That when you buy the book, you can download the workbook. And throughout the entire book, there's a lot of different reflections throughout it. So you really can take it and put it into action right away. It's not something just to read, but you can really move it to, okay, now let me think about myself, or let me think about how this applies to my life. It's really important to me that people move to action and move to experience versus just taking in the knowledge. So I've included that. And I've also included the first course that kind of goes with the book for free as well. So that'll be a download. If you download the workbook, you get kind of a short mini course talking about why you would want to live this exceptional life and how it can impact and bring value to your life. So those are kind of two freebies that go along with it. There's also one of the endorsements that I got gave me the feedback that it would make a really good small group study material. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and created a reading guide for it too. So if you've got a book club or a small group or something like that, there's a reading guide that'll go along with it too that you can use to facilitate discussions as a group. So a lot of extra goodies kind of added in there to bring value. In terms of, my advice or my parting wisdom, I think from my perspective, we've learned so much in recent years. We've been through so much in recent years, and teaching us how to live and giving us lessons for how to live better and live lives that we can feel good about and feel proud of. My grandmother is 90 years old, and she said to me when I was talking to her about the book, she said she lived an exceptional life. When she looks back on her life, she feels she lived an exceptional life. And my goal is to help as many people live that or be able to say that as well. And I truly believe that the key to that is in those 4 keys and in how we apply them in our roles, in our workplaces, families, and communities. And I think if we do that well, we can see tremendous results, get more time back into our life, and just truly live happier lives. And I think if for no other reason than to implement the practices with your children, it is so important that we all make that choice today so that our kids can get the benefit of the knowledge that we know is out there and the wisdom that's available today.
Well, thank you so much. That is wonderful wisdom for sharing, and what a great pieces of advice that your grandmother has given you too. That you now, I love that sort of stuff. That these things that we know and understand that have held say, kept families really connected and kept them strong for generations, for centuries, come down to these, these four fundamental things. So I love the fact that you've added so many different facets to helping people not just know and not just take on the information, but actually understand how to do it and take action and implement these things into their lives. So I want to say thank you so much for being here with us today. This has just worked out perfectly in the subject that you've spoken about. The fact that I could dedicate today's show to my aunt, who really truly, when I look at her, she lived an exceptional life, and you too can do. You too, the viewers, listeners, can do the same. I want you guys to go away just like Jessica does. I want you to live the life that you truly want. I want you to be able to look back when you're a grandmother, great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother at 90 years old and go, you know what? Gee, I lived a great life. So let's just make sure that we do that we live our lives unlocked, because there just is no other way. When you make it, it's our duty to ourselves to make sure that we live life in that manner. So thank you so much for being here today, Jess. Everybody, make sure that you head on over to Jessica's website, get yourself on her mailing list, and so that you can be one of the first. The Unlocked viewers, thankfully, will be some of the first people to get their hands on that book, which I know is going to make a huge difference to your workplace, to your life, and to your family. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. As you know, I'll be back again with another amazing guest on the Unlock Show next Wednesday, 10 a.m. Brisbane time. I'm going to say thanks so much for joining me for today, and thank you so much to Jessica, and we'll see you guys again soon. Bye for now.